Hello and good day. Welcome to our series, Unpack series. We are excited to join you all on this beautiful Martin Luther King Jr. celebration day. We know this today is a day of service, awareness, and resources for our community, so we are excited. My name is Brittany Smalls, and I am the Pennsylvania State Coordinator of Black Voters Matter Fund. I am excited, so excited to join you all this today, and we are going to have an amazing conversation. We have some experts from around Philadelphia that are going to share some wonderful things. Before we get started, just want to share some information about the program today. So this is unPACK is a community-based safe space committed to providing a platform which brings together individuals and collective voices, resources, mental health, social experts to unpack through conversation, sharing, healing, empowerment through a trauma focused and creative lens. The Unpack Show experience is a 90-minute bi-weekly online internet radio broadcast produced by PC Live Coalition, Mill Creek Community Partnership, We Embrace Fatherhood, the Life After Trauma Organization, and various community partners within our community of color to exploratory, healing, and truth-centered forum while uplifting and highlighting and supporting our communal assets and collective power. So again, we are so excited that you are joining us this afternoon, and I want to introduce our amazing moderator, Mr. DeWayne Drummond. Mr. Drummond has been involved in family and community engagement and leadership for almost all of his adult life. He has served as the chairperson for the 24th Ward Democratic Executive Committee from 2010 till today. He's also the president of the Mantua Civic Association since 2012, a political liaison for the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers Union, and the Indigo Bike Share Ambassador. His passion for serving the children and the family in his community and the city of Philadelphia have been realized in his increased involvement in development of the Mantua Transformation Plan, completing the Citizens Planning Committee Institute, and completion of the Mayor's Office of Community Service Fatherhood Initiative. Furthermore, he's gone on ongoing participation in the Promise Zone Initiative collaboration engagement efforts has ensured that his community and constituents remain involved. So without further ado, I am going to turn this over to Mr. DeWayne Drummond.
Thank you, Mrs. Smalls. Today is MLK Day Unpacked. And I'm going to use something that Ms. Smalls said. And I know she liked this quote. She said, I have learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But they will never forget how you made them feel. That was from Dr. Maya Angelou. Now, get into some of our panelists. Ms. Brittany Smalls is an advocate for change from the city of Philadelphia. She has over 10 years of experience in nonprofit and political experiences. She is currently the Black Voters Matters Capacity Building Institute. Welcome, Ms. Smalls. Welcome. Next, we have Mr. Jamal Green, who is a motivational speaker, founder of Retro Action Sports Student Athletics Day, honoring outstanding 3.0 GPA or higher male or female students that play any sports. He is a trainer, a mentor, an advocate, and a youth advocate for over 10 years experience mental health field. Welcome, Mr. Green. Next, we have Miss Alyssa Shantz. Alyssa is the executive director at the Life After Trauma organization. She has attended University of Michigan, Temple University, where she went to work in business for a short time before teaching and developing a curriculum for African American studies. Welcome, Alyssa. Mr. Broderick President is one of Lato's senior trauma clinic trauma clinic. He holds a graduate degree in counseling and psychology from LaSalle University and has 20 years of experience in working with juvenile justice system. Broderick is currently the supervisor of the resident service at Bucks County Youth Center, and he also provides direct therapy services. Welcome to the panelists. MLK Day Unpacked. Now we're going to have Mr. Broderick, President, to give some input on his organization, LATO. Mr. Broderick.
Good afternoon. Thank you, DeWayne. My name is Broderick President, and I am an associate with Life After Trauma organization, otherwise known as LATO. And our mission is to foster empathic approaches to helping children, adolescents, families, and adults deal with trauma. Our goal is to heal in regards to trauma using the principles of prevention, intervention, and recovery. And we want to work with the community, teachers, parents, and other organizations in fostering that ideal of healing and dealing with trauma. So I thank you for this opportunity to speak on that, and happy MLK Day.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I'm going to start with Ms. Brittany Smalls. What does social injustice mean to you?
Social injustice, that is a tough question because, it's so many layers that we have to unpack. But the first thing that pops into my mind is just thinking about what my community has endured, especially in recent times with this current administration that we're under, and how it's been civil unrest, how we've seen riots, and just so many layers that we have to unpack to provide some light to our community. And social injustice particularly means to me that there's some particularly harmful things that are happening to a specific group that is allowing us that we need some change in government, basically. So there's some justice that needs to happen to see a better way of life for people. Some community groups are being harmed, and we need to change that.
Thank you, Ms. Smalls. Alyssa, can you comment on that same question?
Yes, thank you. Brittany, I totally agree that it's a change in administration is going to be a good, really big step towards making things a little better. Although, I look at the historic pattern of just this systemic social injustice, and I think legal and administrative changes are going to be huge. I also think, working from children all the way up and helping to teach them about people's differences, about equality, about the lack of equality that exists is going to be really just imperative. Seeing that people believe that social injustice doesn't exist is just devastating. And that's so deep-seated in so many people in the white population. And it's just, a large and exhausting undertaking to hope that changes. And I hope that changes. And, if every single person starts at home with their own families, with their own children, teaching about social injustice, having those hard conversations, I think that would also be a first step. So it's the changes are happening at every level.
Thank you. I'm gonna ask Mr. President the same question. What does social injustice means to you?
Thank you. It means some of the similar things that have been mentioned already by Alyssa and Brittany. When I think of social injustice, I'm thinking of the criminal justice system. I'm thinking of those forces that are oppressive and marginalize a large group of people and put them in different pockets to where they can't move freely in a civilized society. So when you are oppressed, as a lot of people feel, that leads to this ideal of social injustice, which we've seen play out vividly over the last year. And as Alyssa mentioned, historically, it's been a constant theme for African Americans in this country. So social injustice means to me that lack of opportunity. And most people just want opportunity. They don't want anything an advantage. They just don't want to be disadvantaged and held back. So if we can move that through our political leadership, which we know we're having a change now, but it is that oppressive, systematic thing that I see as social injustice.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to ask Mr. Green this question. How can we expand on the dream? What are we doing now to keep the dream going? And what can we do to keep it alive? Mr. Green.
Thank you. I think in order to expand on the dream, we have to talk about the nightmare and the black eye historically with what's going on in America. And in order for, and I know we're going to get to the trauma and the healing aspects of it later on in the topic, but, you know, the nightmare, I don't think that we're focusing on the nightmare enough. I think the dream is like, you know, today everybody going to go out, they're going to clean, they're going to give out food, you know, they're going to give out bubble gum and T-shirts, but then the nightmare exists tomorrow. It keep going, and then we go back, and then we come back next year, and then we, you know, we say, oh, well, Dr. Martin Luther King, and he was so great, and we go through the formality of things, and we keep going over and over without dealing with the nightmare.
Thank you, Mr. Green, the nightmare. So I'm going to ask Ms. Smalls the same question that I asked Mr. Green. What are we doing to keep the dream going? What can we do to keep it alive? Mrs. Smalls.
I definitely have to agree with Mr. Green. Everything he said, the nightmare is definitely, we're living in some really dark times. I don't think that anybody can say that they have been not impacted by what's going on. I mean, you just have to be impacted in some type of way or form. I don't care who you are, you've been impacted. And I think that in terms of the dream, in some ways we are making it's relevant again. His message is reigning, wanting, you see it in, again, to reiterate the civil unrest, like that. We're protesting. We're holding our leaders accountable. We are not. We understand that we have. I lost my thought. I'm sorry, guys, but I'm so like just flustered right now because I'm just thinking about that question and how it's so. It's personal to me because I just think about the suffering that my people continue to deal with on a daily basis. And so I really don't think, I think in terms of keeping his dream alive, we have to hold folks accountable who got us in this position. And that's the end of it, literally.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mrs. Small. Alyssa, the same question that I asked Ms. Smalls and Mr. Green.
Thank you. Ms. Smalls, I hear that on the holding people accountable. I think that's incredibly important. And I think that group to be held accountable is a really large group of people. You know, myself included, literally everyone who needs to be learning, working, doing better for the community, taking a step back so we can listen and hear and process and, you know, partner and help and support. And I think to one of the things that Martin Luther King Jr. said in his speech is that we refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. And I think people think that if they're helping others, it's sort of pushing them a step back. And I think people need to take a step back, but that doesn't mean anyone's going to lose, right? There's not, you know, helping others doesn't make you lose. So I think, you know, keeping the dream alive, we need equal opportunities. We need, you know, education. We need just so much more equity in all of the areas that just helps support happiness and success, and, you know, help alleviate some of the childhood trauma that's caused by not having that sort of equity. And, you know, there are so many ways that the dream needs to be worked on and kept alive and processed and continued. But yeah, I think holding people accountable and then, you know, having those people take steps to improve the quality of life for others whom they haven't been helpful with or accountable to for the entire history of our country, you know, for hundreds of years. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask Mr. President, can you define the word proactive and also define the word reactive?
Well, when I hear the word proactive, it is something that is thought about. It is a plan. It is a plan of action. It is something that has a goal at the end of it. So when you think about something, you're deliberate in your approach. It's not an impulse. It's not a fly by the seat. It is well thought out. It is well designed. And it is, you have taken the time to look at the pros and cons of that situation. And when I think of, when you say reactive, I think of that is the exact opposite in that it is very impulsive. There is no thought. There is no plan. It is from the gut. It is an emotional thing. There's no thought of the consequences of whatever is said or done in that moment. So the reaction can come with some unintended consequences as a result.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Green, the same question. Can you define the word proactive and also define the word reactive?
Well, proactive, I believe that when you speak on, when we have to narrow down the communities and we have to understand that in our urban communities, there's some issues, and I'm connecting that to trauma, King, I'm pulling it all together. There's been some deep issues in urban communities that haven't been addressed. So when I think of proactive, you know, whether you rich or you poor, we have to look at the healing that needs to take place. And not just in urban communities, but that's a great place to start at. The communities, the households, the public schools, and it's just so many ways that we have to be proactive, because it's one thing to have the funds and you have the different funds to do what you do with your kids if you have kids. But what about the kids in these communities that don't have the money? They don't know who their dad is. They don't know who their mom is. So when I think of proactive, proactive, I mean, I can go on and on for days, so I'm going to be sensitive and mindful to the panel and not take up much time. But to me, proactive, that's what it means. It means getting out. If you are in a Bentley, get out your Bentley, talk to the kids. Don't, you know, it's no high horse. And I think that's what everybody has to be accountable. You know, whether you, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, whether you Puff Daddy, Floyd Mayweather, Jay-Z, is no more to all this looking up to people who go and drive by you, and when it's time to vote, they become a mechanism. They become they're worse than anyone else, because we pull a Jay-Z in to tell people to vote. But what is he building? What is he building in the communities where we can say, you know what, Jay-Z built that, Mayweather built that, Will Smith built that. You know, where are these guys at? So I'm not going to just put pressure on, other races. We got to be accountable. We got to show love. And that's when the healing starts. When we see Will Smith in West Philly getting out his Bentley saying, I'm with y'all, that's when it starts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. I'm going to ask Ms. Smalls the same question. Can you define the word proactive and the word reactive?
Everybody pretty much covered, the meaning of it. But, pro it means before. So basically there's an action plan put in place to allow you to do something successfully, because you're proactive about something. You prepared for that moment. It's planned. And reactive is basically just flying off the whim, and not having any tools in place, kind of going off. I don't want to say reactive is a negative. I don't want to look at it as a negative connotation, because at the end of the day, you're reacting to what's is in front of you. You're creating a scenario from what you have at that moment, and you're sometimes forced to be reactive to, see the results that you in your mind want to see.
Thank you, Ms. Smalls. Somebody had gave me this quote, and I appreciate her for giving me this quote. And it's from Dr. King. It said, "I have a dream that one day on the radiant hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood." And if anybody know me, my motto is, if you're not at the table, you are on the menu. So basically, plan or be planned for. So I'm going to ask Ms. Alyssa, how important is youth engagement in such a time as this?
Thank you. That's a good question. So youth engagement is the most important thing, I think, at a time like this. As a former teacher, they are the most important. The youth, first of all, they start out with I was listening to NPR on my way here, and I heard someone say that they start out with clean hearts, right? So we want to start with people who want to be at the table together, not even, not because they have to be, but because they want to be, because they want to support each other. And we want to teach kids that from the beginning. We want to teach kids that there are differences that exist, that historically there are differences, that people are treated differently. We want to make them aware of that. We want to make them, active in changing that. And I think that is the most important population where we can make these changes, because they have great voices. They're learning. They have great voices on social media. They spread the word. That's I think youth activism is the most important. Martin Luther King Jr. loved having youth participate in the civil rights movement. Education was one of the most important things to him. So I think the youth is just the most important population to be engaging with right now and to be listening to as well. I feel like we often hear a lot of adult voices, and I'm really excited for later on in the show to hear from some youth, because their voices matter so much. So yeah, thank you. Good question.
Thank you, Alyssa. I'm going to ask Mr. Green that same question. How important is youth engagement in such a time as this?
Oh man, it's youth engagement is everything. But I'm gonna connect mentoring to that. Like, the youth need to be led. The youth are like clay. If they're seeing people quote unquote make it, that's a form of separatism. If I make it, but I don't talk to whatever society calls make it. You know what I mean? Like, you know, we need the quote unquote what the world would call mega superstars. Come mentor, come speak in these public schools. Come talk to the teachers. Why is these teachers' salaries so low? Why is it so easy for a teacher to get beat up and it's just accepted? Why is that accepted in our communities? So, you know, I'm a firm believer in it's the right voice. It's if the kids see weakness around them, the kids gonna eat it up. If the kids see poverty around them, they're gonna gravitate to poverty. If they see violence around them, they're gonna gravitate to violence. And though, quote unquote, we know that it's a system behind it, but once again, mentoring, each one teach one. One kid at a time, one step at a day. And that's what's needed. We need more mentors, you know, and not quote unquote the mega superstars, but just people who quote unquote that society would say they made it. I don't care if you in waste management. We need people to, you know, just like when, you know, we was marching and at these different places. All right, well, why are we not marching for the public schools? I mean, like some things some things is right in our face that we could do, but we don't do it because we do things off popularity when it's popular. So once again, it's about accountability and it's about mentoring. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. I'm going to ask Mr. President the same question. How important is youth engagement in such a time as this?
Well, it's the most important thing. Youth engagement is essential in moving things forward. When connecting it to Martin Luther King's dream about the world that we live in now and what he envisioned it to be, youth engagement is so powerful. And as Alyssa alluded to earlier, he loved youth. And at the forefront of the civil rights movement were the youth. We don't get to where we are right now without the youth back then not going to school, filling up those jails in the South, singing those songs while they're in a crowded cell, suffering, getting hosed by and chased by dogs that we were able to see and capture so that the world could understand the level of oppression. So that youth engagement has been essential because they have that drive, they have that fight. When people want to sit back, they said, no, we want something new, and they're hungry. And as Jamal spoke to earlier, they're looking for that leadership. Yeah. So we have to give it to them. And I think in a lot of ways we have failed our youth. I apologize to my daughter for the world that I left her with letting someone like our past or outgoing president take over, because all the gains that Martin Luther King and all the ideals that he strove for, we lost. So the youth were out in the streets marching. Yeah. So they connected right back to Martin Luther King. So they're the ones, and I say, hey, go get it, girl. Y'all go out there and do it. And I'm sorry, and I'm going to do better, and we all have to do better in leading them, cultivating their hunger and their fire, and directing that energy into something that's productive so that they will eventually be the leaders of tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since we're talking about like a movement and civil rights and things of that nature, I got a question for Ms. Smalls. What do you think in the 60s they was singing about when they had a song and they used to march up and down the street, "We shall overcome"? What do you think they was talking about?
They were they were talking about, they were taking a stance for their democracy. They were trying to save themselves. They were trying to get, they were singing for, they were crying out. They were crying out for help. They were crying out to, they wanted to be heard. They wanted for this system to understand, like, they, it was like a humanistic point, like, just like, see us, hear us, we're here, like, you said we shall overcome. They were basically speaking the affirmation over themselves that this is going to happen. We shall overcome. We will see the change we want to see. We will go the places we want to go. We will have, we will have a fulfilled life. They were speaking affirmations over themselves. They were fighting.
Thank you, Mrs. Smalls. Alyssa, same question that I asked Mrs. Smalls.
That's a hard answer to follow. So that's
Right.
I get that same feeling. Yeah. You know, the people marching and singing were talking about, you know, the work they were doing to overcome a system that they didn't choose, a system they weren't a part of creating. And even though there had been hundreds of years of oppression, people came together and they were going to make their own choices and have some agency in how their futures would look, by, you know, uniting and strengthening their bonds and each other, and yeah, and just fighting against the oppression just put upon them, that, you know, the system they're living in, that wasn't a system they built or they chose, but they were fighting against it anyway.
Thank you. Mr. Green, the same question.
Well, unfortunately, we still overcoming, trying to overcome, but because specifically you said what did I think that they were thinking, in the 60s, it hasn't stopped. Like, to me, I think it's worse. I think it's worse because we've had, you know, the Dr. Kings, and if I could add the Malcolm X's and the W. Du Bois. It's almost like they were the blueprint, the Huey Newtons. They were the blueprint. So we haven't followed their blueprint. You know what I mean? We've actually failed their blueprint, because even to sometimes speak on Dr. Martin Luther King and his dream, you know, sometimes I feel insulted for him, because I'm like, how could we speak on his dream, all of us? How can we speak on the dream, and how can we speak on the past, but yet none of us have done anything enough? I'm not saying us at this panel, but we haven't lived it enough. We haven't made and held each other accountable enough. We almost made it like, you know, almost like oh, we're going to just do it on this day. Well, what about tomorrow? What about next week? What about holding each other accountable? What about holding our communities accountable? So to me, like, you know, I love being here, but I naturally, you know, get rallied up, because it's not like I live this. I live it. It's not like I don't play games. Like, I don't, especially when it comes to this, like I don't play this. This is something I live, so I'm very passionate, but going back to the proactive, okay, what are we going to do after this? So to me, where do we go from here? Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. President, how does the pandemic, social unrest, race relations to living the dream?
Wow, that's deep. it's a challenge. It's a hardship. It reflects on society as a whole that we've fallen short. You know, as Jamal mentioned earlier, it was a nightmare. Last year was that. The pandemic highlighted a lot of things that were already wrong in society in regards to healthcare, in regards to leadership. And those are the same things that MLK, Martin Luther King, was speaking to, is America, you're writing us a check marked insufficient funds. And one of the things he mentioned in that same speech was this sense of urgency. Urgency is now, not this gradual process. The pandemic helped speed up that. The civil unrest helped speed up that. So those things that we have talked about that we saw in black and white, we lived them in color this past year, watching people be murdered. So it has been a topic that has been challenging for us all, everyone who's lived through this year in America. It has been traumatic on so many levels, with people losing their homes, their lives, their loved ones. So the dream is still a work in progress, but we got a long way to go, as we know. And I can remember last year around this time, Kobe passed, and I thought, oh my God, that's so awful to watch that happen. Right. And at the end of this year, we had the people storming the Capitol. And all those things that have transpired in between, oh my goodness. So we have our work cut out for us. We've been challenged, but I don't think we're broken. Our spirit is too strong. Yeah. And I think that we will overcome, yes, we will. To connect it back to the previous question, because of that faith, that hope, that what Martin Luther King saw on that mountaintop. He knew he wasn't going to get there. He knew his time was going to be cut short. But that didn't stop him from persevering. Right. And that hasn't stopped our people from persevering. So we have our challenges. We have our work cut out for us. But I think we will, because of that faith. The faith is that belief in that is not seen. So if we keep those things in mind, through trauma, through loss, through devastation, through lack of economic opportunities, through lack of education, all those things, we will overcome those.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, I just have one last thing to say, and I'm going to ask the panel. Y'all can say it together, or y'all can say it individually. When you spell community, if you take the C, the O, the M, and the M off, what do you have?
Unity.
Unity.
Thank you. This is MLK Day Unpacked, and we're going to take a little pause. Peace.
Thank you.
Thank you.